Good day, ma'am. I am Trina Paquete from BS Ed Science 3A, and this is my highlights from Chapter 1 until Chapter 10. So, let's proceed to Chapter 1. The Chapter 1 is all about the science and the universe. So, this chapter introduces the concept of a light year, a fundamental unit of measurement in astronomy. It clarifies that a light year is a measure of distance, not time, representing the distance light travels in 1 year. The text emphasizes how this concept represents our understanding of the vastness of the universe and our place within it, offering a sense of cosmic history when observing distant stars. It also explains the practical application of light years in comparing distance between celestial objects, making the essence skills of space more comprehensible. So, the concept that stood out to me the most is the light year. It's a unit of measurement used in astronomy, but is not a measure of time, as the name might suggest. Instead, it's a measure of distance, specifically the distance that light travels in 1 year. So, I explained it. I found the concept of a light year so interesting because it completely reframes our understanding of distance. It highlights how truly enormous the universe is and what makes ponder our own place with it. So thinking about how long it takes light from distant stars to reach us gives a sense of the ancient past, as we're literally looking back in time when we observe the sky night. So, I describe why this learning stayed with me, or I found it interesting, because the distance in space extremely large. Astronomers use scientific notation and light years to measure them. A light years is the distance that light travels in 1 year. Light travels at a speed of 3 times 105 kilometers per second, which means 1 light year is equal to 9.46 times 1012 kilometers. Using these units allows scientists to compare distance between stars, galaxies, and other celestial objects more easily. And now let's proceed to Chapter 2, Observing the Sky, the Birth of Astronomy. So this chapter explores the fascinating journey of our understanding of the cosmos from earlier geocentric beliefs to the revolutionary heliocentric model. We will delve into the concepts that shape these models, the observational evidence that lead to their development, and the profound implication of this shift in perspective for science, culture, and our place in the universe. So, the concept that stood out to me is the geocentric model versus heliocentric model transition. So why this I choose concept? Because for thousands of years, ancient astronomers believed in the geocentric model, the idea that Earth is the fixed center of the universe, with the sun, moon, planets, and stars orbiting around it. So this view was shaped by direct visual observation from Earth. Celestial bodies appear to move across the sky, while our planet feels stationary under our feet. So Greek philosopher Ptolemy refined this model with complex epicycles, small objects within larger orbits. So to explain the occasional backward movement of planets, retrograde motion. So the breakthrough came with the heliocentric model, which proposed that the sun is the center and the earth is just one planet orbiting it, along with other planets that also rotate on their axis. So why I describe this learning stayed with me or I found interesting. What fascinates me most is how this transition reflects the core of scientific progress. So moving beyond intuitive perception to embrace evidence-based explanation. When Even when they challenge deeply held beliefs, it's remarkable that ancient astronomers could develop such sophisticated mathematical frameworks, so like flow limits, cycles, to make accurate predictions despite working from wrong foundational assumption. The human story behind the shift from Copernicus' cautions publications to Galileo's conflict with authority shows how science intertwined with culture, society, and courage. Understanding this transition helps me appreciate why we continue to revise our models of the universe today. Now, let's proceed to chapter 3, Orbits and Gravity. So this chapter focuses on Kepler's law of planetary motion, highlighting the revolutionary idea that planets move in elliptical orbits rather than perfect circles, and that their speed varies depending on their distance from the Sun. It explains Kepler's first law, stating that planets orbit the Sun at two foci of an ellipse, and his second law, which describes how a line connecting a planet to the Sun sweeps out equal areas in equal amounts of time. So that text emphasizes the elegance and predictive power of this law derived from meticulous observation and how they laid the groundwork of Newton's theory of gravity. So the accompanying image visually depicts the Sun with planets and elliptical orbits. So what really stood out to me this time is Kepler's laws of planetary motion, especially the idea that planets don't move in perfect circle but in ellipses, and that their speed changes as they orbit. So it's amazing how these observational laws precisely describe the paths of celestial bodies. I explain this concept. First, Kepler's first law states that planets orbit the Sun in elliptical paths with the Sun at one of the two foci of the ellipse, not necessarily at the center. His second law explained that a line connecting to a planet to the Sun swipe out equal areas in equal amount of time, meaning so planets move faster when they are closer to the Sun and slower when they are farther away. So this law revealed the elegant, non-uniform geometry of celestial motion, moving beyond the ancient idea of perfect circular orbits. So I described why this learning stayed with me, or why I found it interesting. So the elegance and predictive power of Kepler's law are what make them so memorable. So they are derived purely from meticulous observation, yet they perfectly capture the underlying mathematical structure of orbits. It's fascinating to realize that the universe follows such precise geometric rules, and that by observing this pattern, we could unlock fundamental truth about how planets move. So this understanding laid the groundwork for Newton's theory of gravity. And now, let's proceed to chapter 4, Earth, Moon, and Sky. So this chapter explores the dynamic relationship between the Earth and the Moon and how their interaction shape observable phenomena in our sky, so such as tides and eclipse. It explains that our sky is dominated by the Sun during the day and the Moon and stars at night. So the Moon, as Earth's Earth only natural satellites orbits our planet, and its faces area are result of how much of its sunlit surface is visible from Earth. So the gravitational pull between the Earth and Moon is also responsible for ocean tides, with the Moon being the primary drivers. Eclipses, both solar and lunar, occur when the Sun, Earth, and Moon align in specific ways, creating spectacular celestial events. So the chapter emphasizes how understanding these relationships helps demystify common celestial occurrences and fosters a deeper appreciation for our solar system. So the accompanying image illustrates the Sun, Earth, and Moon, showing the Moon's orbit tilted at 5 degrees relative to Earth's orbit around the Sun, which is the key to understand why eclipses don't happen every month. So the concept that most struck me or stood me is the dynamic relationship between the Earth and the Moon, and how their interaction shape observable phenomena in our sky, such as tides and eclipses. It's amazing how these two bodies so close to us create such as profound effects. So I explained this concept because our sky is dominated by the sun during the day and the moon and the stars at night. The moon, Earth's only natural satellite, orbits around planet, and its phases are a result of how much of its sunlit surface we can see from Earth. So the gravitational pull between the Earth and Moon is also responsible for our ocean tides, with the Moon's gravity being the primary drivers. So eclipses, both solar and lunar, occur when the Sun, Earth, and Moon align in specific ways, creating spectacular celestial events. So I describe why this learning stayed with me. I find this topic so compelling because it makes the vastness of space feel personal. The moon, a constant presence in our sky, isn't just a distant rock, it's an active participant in Earth's system, influencing our oceans and creating breathtaking visual events. Understanding these relationships between demystify common celestial occurrences and fosters a deeper appreciation for the intricate working of our solar system. It connects the abstract concept of astronomy to tangible experience we can observe ourselves, or why you found it interesting. And now, let's proceed to chapter 5, the radiation and spectra. So this chapter introduced the concept that celestial objects emit unique patterns for electromagnetic radiation, which can be analyzed as a spectra to understand their composition, temperature, and motion. It explains that everything in the universe emits electromagnetic radiation, spanning a vast range from radio waves to gamma rays. When this radiation passes through a prism or spectrograph, it splits into its component colors or wavelengths, creating a spectrum. This spectrum is not always a smooth rainbow, but often contains specific dark absorption or bright emission lines, acting like fingerprints that reveals the chemical elements present and their physical condition. The chapter highlights the power of analyzing these spectral lines to learn about distant and accessible objects, transforming light into a rich source of information and enabling the identification of the building blocks of stars and galaxies. This analytical power of spectroscopy opens up with the entire universe for study. The accompanying diagram illustrates atomic energy levels and spectral lines showing how different series, Lyman, Balmer, Paskin bracket correspond to electron transition between energy levels. So this concept that stood out the most is how different types of celestial objects emit unique patterns of electromagnetic radiation, which we can analyze as spectra to understand their composition, temperature, and motion. It's like each stars and galaxy has its own unique barcode that tells us its story. So I explain this concept because everything in the universe emits electromagnetic radiation, which is energy that travels in waves. This radiation spans a huge range from radio waves and microwaves to visible light, ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma rays. When this radiation passes through a prism or a spectrograph, it splits into its component colors or wavelengths, creating a spectrum. This spectrum isn't always a smooth rainbow. It often has a specific dark for absorption or bright for emission lines, so which act like fingerprints revealing the chemical elements present and their physical condition. So I describe why this learning stayed with me, the idea that we can learn so much about distance and inaccessible objects just by analyzing the light. The sun as is incredibly powerful. It transforms light from just something we see into a rich source of information. Discovering the specific elements to produce specific spectral lines means we can identify the building blocks of stars and galaxies without ever visiting them. So this analytical power of spectroscopy opens up the entire universe for study. And now let's proceed to chapter 6, Astronomical Instrument. So this chapter discusses how various astronomical instruments are designed to detect and analyze different forms of electromagnetic radiation, enabling us to see and understand the universe. Beyond our natural vision, it highlights the ingenuity in engineering tools that capture everything from faint radio waves to high-energy X-rays. Astronomical instruments such as telescopes are crucial for studying space by collecting radiation, light, radio waves, X-rays, etc. So that travels from distant objects. Different instruments are sensitive to different parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. For example, optical telescope collects visible light, radio telescope collects radio waves, and space-based observatories like the Hubble's or James Webb Space Telescope can capture a wide range of radiation without being inhibited by Earth's atmosphere. So this instrument not only magnify distant objects but also allow us to analyze their properties through spectroscopy. The chapter emphasizes humanity's persistent curiosity in developing diverse instruments tailored to specific scientific questions, making even seemingly disparate tools like radio dishes and optical telescopes vital for understanding cosmic phenomena. The image shows us a telescope set up against a backdrop of a starry sky and sunset, symbolizing the exploratory of the universe. So the concept that stood out to me the most is how different types of astronomical instruments are designed to detect and analyze various forms of electromagnetic radiation, allowing us to see and understand the universe in ways beyond our natural vision. It's incredible how we've engineered tools to capture everything from faint radio waves to high-energy X-rays. So I explained this concept. So astronomical instruments like telescopes are crucial for studying space. They work by collecting radiation, light, radio waves, X-rays, and etc. that travels from distant objects. Different instruments are sensitive to different parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. For example, optical telescope collect visible light, while radio telescope collects radio waves, and space-based observation like a Hubble or James Webb Space Telescope can capture a wide range of radiation without being inhaled by Earth's atmosphere. This instrument not only magnify distant object but also allow us to analyze their properties through spectroscopy. So, I describe why this learning stayed with me. I find it fascinating that humanity has developed such as ingenious ways to overcome the limitation of our own senses to explore the universe. The sheer diversity of instruments, each tailored to a specific type of radiation or specific question, highlights our persistent curiosity. It's mind-boggling to think that a radio telescope dish, which looks so different from a sleek optical telescope, is just a vital for understanding cosmic phenomena like distant galaxy or for the remnants of the Big Bang. And now, let's proceed to Chapter 7, Other Worlds, an Introduction to the Solar System. So, in this chapter, introduce the diverse celestial bodies that make up our solar system, moving beyond Earth to explore the unique characteristic of planets, dwarf planets, and moon. We will examine the condition on these different worlds, highlighting the vast range of environment that exists within our cosmic neighborhood. By comparing the celestial bodies, we gain a deeper appreciation for the factors that contribute to habitability and incredible variety of phenomena in space. So the concept that stood out the most to me is the sheer diversity of worlds within our own solar system. So from the scorching volcanic plains of Venus to the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, each planet and celestial body presents a unique environment shaped by its own history and composition. It's fascinating to consider the vast range of condition that exists just a relatively short distance from Earth. So my own words concept, our solar system is not just a collection of planets orbiting the sun, but a dynamic and varied family of worlds. Each planet, dwarf planets, and moon has its own distinct characteristic, influenced by factors like distance from the sun, atmospheric composition, and geological activity. This credible variety means that while Earth is our home, it's just one example of what a world can be, so with many other fascinating environments to explore. So this learning was stayed with me because it truly emphasizes how special and perhaps rare moon's conditions are for life as we know it. So it makes me appreciate the intricate balance of factors that allows our planet to thrive. The idea that there are so many different worlds so close to us, each with its own story and potential for discovery, it's incredibly exciting and fuels a sense of wonder about the cosmos. And now let's proceed to Chapter 8, Earth as a Planet. So this chapter explores Earth's identity as a planet, focusing on its internal structure and the dynamic processes that shape its surface. We will examine the distinct layers that compose our planet, so from the crust to the core, and understand how these internal features influence phenomena like the plate tectonics and the generation of Earth's magnetic field. By understanding Earth's internal working, we gain a deeper appreciation for its unique characteristics and its place with the solar system. So the concept that stood out to me is the most is the layered structure of the Earth interior composed of distinct zones, the crust, mantle, and core, further divided into outer and inner cores. So this internal structure, largely hidden from us, is revealed through seismic studies which analyze how earthquake waves travel through the planets. So in my own words, why this concept? So Earth is not a uniform ball but has a complex internal structure. The most outermost layer is the thin, solid crust we live in. Beneath that is the most thinker mantle, which is mostly solid but can flow over geological timescales. So at the center lies the core, which has a liquid outer part of the solid inner part. So these layers have different composition and properties, and their interactions drive many of Earth's geological processes. So this learning stayed with me because it's fascinating to realize that so much of our planet's activity like plate tectonics and the generations of our magnetic field originates from processes deep within the Earth. So the idea that we can understand these hidden layers through indirect methods like seismic waves is quite remarkable. It adds a whole new dimension to understanding Earth as a dynamic planet. And now let's proceed to chapter 10. Earth-like planets, Venus and Mars. So this chapter introduces us to our planetary universe, Venus and Mars, and explores why they are considered Earth-like despite their significant differences. We will delve into their unique environments, comparing their atmospheres, surface condition, and potential for past or present habitability. By studying these terrestrial planets, we gain valuable insight into the diverse evolutionary paths planet can take, the critical factor that determine whether a planet can support life. So, the concept that stood out the most to me is the comparative study of terrestrial planets and their divergent evolutionary histories, specifically focusing on Venus and Mars as our neighbors. So it's striking how these planets, despite their similarity origin, have been developed such vastly different environments. So, in my own words, this concept, Venus and Mars, while being Earth's closest planetary neighbors, have followed dramatically different evolutionary paths. Venus, often called Earth's twin, so due to its similar size and mass, is now a soaring hot world with a dense, toxic atmosphere, making it inhospitable. So Mars, on the other hand, is a cold, dry planet with a thin atmosphere. So, but evidence suggests it may have once been more Earth-like, so possible harboring liquid water. Studying this difference helps us understand the complex factors that govern planetary habitability. So, this learning stayed with me because it underscores the delicate balance of conditions that make Earth so uniquely suited for life. So, the extreme environment of Venus and Mars serves as a stark contrast, highlighting that what could happen to Earth under different circumstances. It makes the study of planetary science incredibly compelling as we seek to understand not only other worlds but also the factors that protect and sustain our own. And that's all for my highlights. Thank you.